In today's video, I'm going to show you guys how to build a 1440p gaming PC build on a budget with parts that you can actually buy right now that are pretty easy to put together and offer up great performance across a huge range of the latest and most popular titles. I'll be walking you through all of the parts I chose and why, including some potentially controversial picks, the build process from start to finish, and looking at those all-important gaming benchmark numbers a little bit later. Let's do this. The NZXT Function Elite and Lift Elite have landed. With NZXT's magnetic switches, with Hall effect sensors for precise control and rapid trigger functionality, the Function Elite is the perfect gaming companion. Paired up with the Lift Elite, a 57-gram ultra lightweight gaming mouse with a 26,000 DPI and up to 70 hours of battery life, you have a setup pairing built to perform. Check them out at the first links in the description below. Now I'm going to start by addressing the most controversial bit of today's build, and that is the GPU choice. I've gone NVIDIA. Yeah. This is the RTX 5060 Ti, and I genuinely believe for this build at this price point, it's the best option. Now let me explain why. Why? Before that, I should point out explicitly this is the 16GB variant, and if you're in the market for a 5060 Ti, you should only consider the 16GB version. Do not buy the 8GB model. Now this comes in for a higher price point than AMD's new RX 9060 XT, but offers up broadly more performance across the board. I would also say that, especially here in the UK, but I'm seeing it over in the US too, NVIDIA cards are actually suffering from much lower price inflation than what AMD cards are receiving. Now the 5060 Ti also gives you DLSS, it gives you multi-frame gen, but you haven't got to use it. It gives you ray tracing that is a step above the rest, and it does so for a pretty competitive price. We're talking around $430. For that, you can see in these charts the performance numbers are pretty good. Just shy of 91 FPS in Cyberpunk 2077 at 1440p high, just shy of 250 FPS on average in Apex Legends, marginally ahead of the RX 9060 XT, and 42 FPS on average in Alan Wake 2 with ray tracing enabled, again beating out the AMD competition. Now this particular model that I've selected is from MSI, and it's their gaming, not like the Gaming X or the Gaming X3, it's just the gaming 5060 Ti, which makes it one of the more entry-level and, in theory, affordable cards on the market. It's got a small factory overclock, hence the OC edition on the box, and you can see this thing is pretty small, it's pretty compact, and actually really looks quite nice. One thing that I like, and I feel like this is another controversial opinion, is that they have used the new 12-volt 2x6 connector, so that removes the need for those 6+2 pin connections or any pigtails, and I think is a slightly cleaner aesthetic overall. One thing that's kind of surprising about this GPU is how small the PCB is. It's actually only this big. The rest is all heatsink extension to help with slightly better cooling. Now for my NVIDIA GPU, I of course have picked an AMD CPU, and this is the AMD Ryzen 5 9600X. If you want to trim a bit of budget out, you could drop down to the non-X version. Availability of that right now is kind of complicated, but in the UK you can find them quite easily. Now this is a 6-core 12-thread chip that I really like. I've used it in loads of builds here on the channel and in loads of builds over on GeekaPC, which is our UK pre-built company, where you can buy builds that I assemble on the channel just like this. Now for the motherboard, I was looking to find one of MSI's cheapest motherboards that they do, to match of course the theme with the graphics card and to optimize the budget within this build. And that's when I discovered this, the MSI B850 Gaming Plus. Now this particular board is the Wi-Fi version and comes with a few nice features, such as PCI Gen 5 on the X16 slot, as well as on the NVMe slot, our AM5 socket for of course support for any Ryzen 7 or 9000 CPU, including the X3Ds, and of course DDR5 memory. The rear I/O is pretty good too, with an optical audio port, which I like to see, a 5GB Ethernet, loads of USBs, including Type-C, and of course USB Type-A, and it's got Wi-Fi 7. Some of the cheaper B850 boards only have Wi-Fi 6E, and I prefer the extra oomph of Wi-Fi 7 if you've got, of course, a compatible router. I'm also going to talk about the RAM and SSD at this stage before starting to install some bits onto the motherboard. This is the Teamgroup MP44L. I'm going to go for the 1TB in this build, but if you've got the budget, 2TB would be better. And as far as RAM is concerned, returned Corsair's Vengeance RGB DDR5. This kit is 6200 MHz and has a low CL32 CAS latency, helping to keep that performance in the right window. I'm going to go ahead and install all of these bits and pieces now, the CPU, the RAM and the NVMe drive, into the motherboard. In terms of CPU installation, this is pretty easy, but it can be daunting, especially if this is your first gaming PC build. Now what you want to do is find the CPU socket, locate the arm, push it down and lift it up. That's then going to fully free the actual lid of the CPU socket and enable you to drop the CPU into place. Now be aware, there is one very particular orientation you've got to use, and that's with the triangle pointing up to the top left-hand corner of the motherboard. Once you've done that, we're going to drop the socket cover down, leave the plastic on, return the arm into place, and the plastic will pop straight off. I'm going to then follow up with the RAM. I'll be using the 2nd and 4th RAM DIMM slots in today's build. There's only clips on the top of the DIMM slots for this particular motherboard, which makes things a little easier. Before finishing off with the M.2 SSD, now this is pretty easy, and I think this is a fully toolless installation, meaning we just push that little button back. It is indeed MSI are making our life super easy here before sliding the drive in. You've then got this little retention clip, which we're gonna, I believe, spin round. That was pretty simple. And then of course, return the M.2 cover into place. Now you could, if you wanted to, save this top slot for a Gen 5 drive in future and use one of the lower slots, but I just think popping it at the top is gonna make life more simple, and of course, gives us the benefit of the passive heatsink cooling. So the motherboard assembly is looking good, but let's see if there's any prep needed for the cooler, because it always makes sense to do this earlier than later. Now, I should point out that I've gone for what could widely be regarded as a slightly overkill choice. And Montech actually sent out this, which might be a more affordable addition to the build if you're looking to save some cash. But I've opted to go for MSI's CORELIQUID A13 for a couple of reasons. The case I've gone for today supports up to a 360mm rad at the top. That's going to help with general CPU temperatures, of course, but more importantly, the airflow and temperatures of the rest of the build in general. Plus, with this being pretty affordable, it's in a similar price bracket to the Montech Hyperflow 360, which we love here on the channel. It just made a lot of sense to me. It also helps keep a little bit of an MSI theme between the GPU, the motherboard, and the cooler, which I guess is quite nice and helps to keep the whole build feeling pretty on brand. Now in the box, there are some AMD specific mounting brackets, and you can see these have got screw threads built in. These screw threads are actually going to go straight into these 4 holes on the motherboard built-in backplate. And to get to those, I need to remove this stock black plastic mounting hardware. So I'm going to take that off, then attach the AM5 brackets to the bottom of the cooler before moving on to the motherboard installation. With the motherboard assembly then ready to go, it's time for the case, which I realised I haven't spoken about yet. This is the Montech, forgotten what it's called, X5. I saw this at Computex and I was really, really pleased when Montech told me it's coming out now. I was like, wow, this is cool. It's very nice. It's got lots of really cool features that I really rather like. It's got a lovely, lovely mesh front panel here with 3 140mm ARGB fans pre-installed behind. At the back of the case, if I take off the full tempered glass side panel, apart from, of course, this mesh dust filter area at the bottom, it's got a 120mm ARGB fan in the rear. And I think, if memory serves me correctly, that if I remove the rear panel, these fans are all wired up to a single 5V ARGB, so I can power them off the motherboard for the RGB, get everything synced up. It's very easy. And the kicker, this thing is cheap, which helps, of course, in a build like this, where I'm trying to optimize budget as best I possibly can. That then means it's easy to install the motherboard as well. All the standoffs are in the right places. This is an ATX board. This is an ATX case. And that means sliding the board in is a simple case of 1, 2, and 3. The only downside, if you're watching this Montech, I don't think any of these standoffs are actually raised, so it doesn't hold the board in. You actually have to hold and screw. That means probably laying the case down flat is going to be the easiest way to get this done, and all the screws and stuff you need are actually included in a bag, so nothing really you've got to worry about as far as that's concerned. I'm then going to do the CPU cooler, and I'm going to start off with the radiator. Some people do the water block first. The only problem that you tend to have with this way around is that then you've got the big radiator to contend with, which is big and heavy and can cause some damage. Although I have actually realised I have made a small error. In order for the MSI logo to face the right way, the brackets actually need to be on the side of the cooler, not on the top and the bottom. So I'm going to screw the radiator in with the included screws, fix the brackets on the CPU cooler, and then secure this onto the processor. How the f does this work? I think I did get it right. Maybe this changes. Oh, for f I got it right, but the top plate spins. Oh. Take 2. Large grain of rice size is going to be absolutely fine. And I'm then going to run all of the universal ARGB cables to the rear of the case to be dealt with a little bit later. The final component I haven't yet spoken about is the power supply. Of course, the GPU I'm going to save until last. Why? Because just installing it at the end is so much easier and makes accessing all the cables and wiring in this build a lot more simple. Now, I've gone for this, the RM750E. This is the new 2025 version, and I'm going to sound like a broken record going round and round and round. I've used this in so many builds. I say it all the time. I really like it. It's ATX 3.1, it's PCI 5.1, and it's Cybernetics A for noise and Platinum for efficiency. All of that for a price point that is cheaper than basically anything else on the market. There really isn't much more to say. The only other thing to mention, which I always talk about with this power supply, are the cables. They're not like braided as such, but they're individually nylon sleeved, which makes a massive difference and I think looks rather fantastic. And they come with these nice cable combs pre-attached from the factory, which is a really nice touch and helps to make the whole build look a little more clean. Now, for today's build, there's a few different cables that we're going to need. Principally, this motherboard power cable is the main one, but we're also going to need a CPU power connector. This one here is a 4+4 pin design. A quick glance at the motherboard. We actually need 2 of those, so I'm going to dig out the other one. This magically flew out of nowhere. This is a SATA power cable. You might think, I don't need this. I haven't got any hard drives or SSDs. You'd be wrong. You do need this, as this is what's going to power up things like the RGB hubs and any fan splitters and that kind of thing. And then there should be one more cable that I need. Our PCI Gen 5.1 connector. So again, it's got this nice little cable comb and the tips are grey. This is so you can actually tell if the connector is not fully inserted and helps to prevent some of the issues that some people have had with those 12-volt 2x6 and then the previous GPU high power connectors. So with that, it's time to go ahead and put all of the modular cables into the power supply's modular interface and go from there. I'm then going to screw the power supply into the rear of the case with the fan facing downwards to pull fresh air up and through the unit, and then go ahead and do all the cables and wiring. The motherboard to the right hand side, the CPU up to the top left. A GPU power cable is of course going to be saved until later, and then I'm also going to do the front panel cables at this stage. These are the really fiddly ones, like the HD audio to the bottom left, JFP1 to the bottom right, and of course the USB 3 Type A and Type C for those fast ports on the top panel. Oh, and a USB 2, because this case has one of those too. Surely you would think that just having 2 USB 3s would be cheaper than having 1 3 and 1 2 on the basis they're of the same connector. I don't know. Let me know if you happen to know that kind of nerdy info in the comments down below. Now, fun fact, me and editor Dan just spent the last 10 minutes or so nerding out about EDM house music. He wrote all the lyrics. The whole song is here. She just sang it, which means the montage for today's video is going to absolutely slap. Ow, that really hurt. And if it doesn't, then please dislike and subscribe and comment. It's the end of the GeekaWhat YouTube channel. No! So anyway, I'm going to install the graphics card. I'm going to use the 2nd and 3rd PCI slots in today's build. And this graphics card is actually quite dinky, which I guess is a good thing, helps with case compatibility. This is quite a large chassis, so we shall see. While we're on the theme of cool GeekaWhat trivia, the montages in our videos have always been my favourite bit, and all of the music we use in them is inspired by the kind of music that I listen to. So if you've ever commented,
James, the music in the montage,
it stinks, then I am deeply offended. But guess what? It's not going anywhere. Anyway, I'm going to stop talking about dance music and montages and instead install this graphics card. Look at that, nice and easy. Couple of screws in the back to secure it into place. This case from Montech, definitely on the cheap side, but it's been pretty easy to build in today, and I'm hoping it should look quite good in a few moments' time. Final screw up there, GPU power cable threaded through and plugged in. Pull the slack back through, and we should be in a pretty good spot. And then it's time to see how good this thing looks. Will it boot the first time, or power on, I should say? Yes. I've forgotten one of the SATA power cables I told you about earlier. So you can see here, we've got the SATA power. We're gonna plug that in. Yes, it's fixed it. Look at that. Wow, that actually looks even better than I was expecting. We've got all of our RGB synced to the motherboard. Apart from, I think, the ones at the front, they all look synced to me. My wiring worked. I'll rejoin you in a moment for the performance, but enjoy some beautiful shots of this system once I've figured out the RGB, probably in MSI's Mystic Light software. Now then, the big question, performance. The RTX 5060 Ti and Ryzen 5 9600X are an awesome combination, And as you can see from the benchmark results on your screen now at 1440p and 1080p high settings, frame rates are really strong. I've also got to give a quick shout out to MSI for sending over this, their 272 URX. It's wildly overkill for this build, but we've been using it for loads of our benchmarking, with a 4K 240Hz refresh rate and a stunning QD OLED panel. I'll link it down below. Now, taking a closer look into one or two of these titles, starting off with Call of Duty's Black Ops 6 first at 1440p high settings, and you can see here over 125 FPS on average. Not only does the gameplay look visually great, but obviously this high frame rate gives you a competitive environment in which you can play, and you can't ask for anything more than that. Move through into Doom the Dark Ages, real AAA title. We did drop down to 1080p here when testing at high settings, just to ensure the frame rate was in the right window, and here the FPS lied on average at 88 frames per second. If competitive esports titles are your bag, then Fortnite's worth a look. 1080p competitive settings, that's with everything tuned down to low except the render distance, which is crucially set to far, and that yielded over 200 FPS all told. 212 to be precise. What do you guys think of this build? Let me know in the comments below. You can find latest pricing and availability at the links in the description too. Thanks for watching, and as always, we'll see you in the next one.